Hi, my name's Ben and I'm a data engineer at Quintessence. Now today we're not going to be looking at some demonstrations so much as we're going to be talking about the Quintessence entity model. So to start, I'm not going to go into any of these blocks here. I'm just going to hit F1 and open the Quintessence Help. Now inside the Quintessence Help there's a lot of different useful articles. We're going to go to the Quintessence knowledge base and go to Quintessence entities. I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger. We're going to look over here at what we call a data model diagram. Now we can see in Quintessence we've been talking a lot about entities, about time series, about relationships, and we can see a very simple diagram of how these things connect together. Entities are our objects such as portfolios or instruments, and they are related to each other by relationships. Those are these green lines. And we can store data either on the entity directly, we call that time series data, or on the relationship between two entities, which we call relationship data. Now, there are a couple of differences between all these different types of data, and I'm going to just briefly go through them inside my Excel book. Here I've got a time series, and time series has a couple factors to it that make up a number. We've obviously got the value date, and we've also got a thing called the declaration date, which lets you track when numbers were announced. We also sometimes call this information as at date. And then we've got a factor, so for example, the close price or the price. We've got a unit, now this is the currency that might be important. A period, this defines whether it's a daily aggregation or a monthly aggregation or something like that. We've got attributes, which allow you to specify whether this is a historical number or a forecast number, or really any number of things. And we've got a source specific for understanding where the data comes from. Right, relationships are a lot simpler. They only have a date. They have a relationship type, such as saying this is a constituent, or saying this is a derivative, or something like that, and they've also got a source. Now then we've got relationship series, which are really a combination of time series and relationships. And the way we set it up in the database is actually that it's exactly like a time series in all of these ways, and it's also like a relationship, and it's a combination of those two things. So we've got a value date and a declaration date on the numbers. There's a factor, there's a unit, there's a period, there's an attribute, there's a source for the numbers, and then there's also a relationship type that the data is linked to, as well as a source for which the relationship comes from. Now more lately we've added some more slightly simpler versions of these. We call them characteristics. This might be a static value that you have to append to an entity to maybe understand it. For example, its asset class. And this only is made up of a factor. You don't need to load a date onto it, or a unit, or a period, or an attribute, or a source, and you can't. It's not made for that. We've also got lists, which are like relationships, and they only take a relationship type. So if an index contains all the instruments, or you want to track all the instruments in your system, you might make a list of all those instruments linked to an entity called all instruments basket, for example. There's no need to track over time how those things change, what source the data is coming from. All you're interested in is having a central entity that you know all your instruments are within. Now, this is just a couple factors of the data model. And if we go back to that help file, we'll be able to see that there's not a huge amount more to this. But because entities can be all sorts of things, and because time series have so many factors to them, this can get quite complicated. Anyways, I hope this has helped you for understanding Quintessence data model and how our data fits together. And I hope this helps you building your solutions